Well, it is 10 o'clock Pacific time by my calendar, so I am going to kick us off and welcome to everybody who's joined us today for time management in a work from home remote world. For some of us, working from home was something that we might have started doing off and on or in a variety of circumstances. And then for most of the world back in March, at least in the US, it became sort of the standard unless you're an essential worker. So a lot of things have changed. My background in time management goes back to 1997. I used to work in one of the entertainment studio companies here in Los Angeles, and I got certified as a Franklin Covey facilitator of time management back in those days. I taught that for quite a few years, and then there were different versions of time management that came around. And through that, I realized, well, there's these foundational principles, and they're not necessarily intellectual property of any one company. They're just the basics of how to make really solid decisions in terms of managing time. So this is, as I get us going, this is who I am. My name is Jerry Brem, and that picture was taken way before we were in a wear a mask and don't go around strangers. I have, as I said, a history in this space since 1997. My experience in human resources goes back to the late 80s, and I have been with the executive advisory since about 2007. When I joined that firm, we talked about, does time management really fit in a space where really the focus is on communication and managerial skills? And very quickly, I was able to argue, yes, it does. A huge piece of this, we're going to talk about it, is about communication. To be effective with time management means you have to be an effective communicator with your peers, with your leadership, with your direct reports, with your family. So we're going to talk about that. It's the one area of content that definitely bleeds out, if you will, in terms of you can't really compartmentalize. We all thought we could compartmentalize back in the day, thinking, well, I get in my car and I commute to a new space, and now I'm only in business mode. And it's if we shut off all of our personal expectations and responsibilities. And then we would get in our car and we'd commute back to our home, and all of a sudden we'd pretend like we weren't worried about work. So now we have that merging and the stress that comes from realizing they've always been there, intermingled, but now we have to deal with them in an intermingled way. So this is the agenda for today. We're going to learn how to identify and assess priorities. So what's really driving the work that you do and the business that you do, managing your time and your energy. And we're going to think about that as energy as opposed to managing the clock. The last one is communication tips. As I mentioned, it's about communication. And we're going to think about those times where we have to navigate those personal and professional expectations that are on us. Throughout today, we're going to have this chat feature, and so I'm going to encourage you to make sure that's open up on your screen, and you can send things to me privately, by the way. You don't have to put it on blast if you don't want to. But I'd love to hear just some things that are going on in your mind as we go through this. So the first one, just thinking about your top priorities. If you were to bundle up the top 3 to 5, top 10, whatever it might be, what gets you going? What do you know you're trying to accomplish in your life? And I'll give you an example. When I've done this in the past, somebody might say their health or their family comes up quite quickly. So I'd love for you to go into chat, and you don't have to share everything with me, but go ahead and just one thing that comes to mind that's one of your top priorities, particularly right now in a work from home world. And again, you can use the private feature. So as you send things to me in chat, I will be able to then share that, but I won't have to assign it to a person. There is something coming in. Financial stability has come in. Fantastic. Obviously, we've got family here. Maintaining that work-life balance. You can see some of these that are coming. Mental health is huge right now. Organizing the garage, fantastic. Balancing family needs and work demands. Financial independence has come in privately. Work harmony, beautiful. Career has come up. Balanced life, less stress. Physical, mental, yeah. Decreased stress. So we can see there's some themes here in terms of definitely this current state is creating a great deal of stress for us. Oh, I love this staying present, as you guys are seeing, just came in. This idea of of how do we make all of this work and maintain our sanity, because we'd had it figured out. We had a system that worked moderately well for most of us in terms of trying to balance what we thought. I would say that balancing work and life is a misnomer that we got fed some false data a long time ago. It's never going to be a balance. Ultimately, something's going to take precedence, and there are times where we are going to be choosing work over family, and there are times we're going to have to choose family over work. And the one thing I'm not seeing here, besides it's sort of built into some of these, but not specifically called out, is myself. So if you have some of these about taking care of yourself and managing stress, that's great, because that is making you a priority. But if you didn't have that on your list, I'm going to ask you to mentally or jot that down. Put yourself on that list. It really goes back to that analogy of, or if you, the last time you were on a plane and they talked to you about the importance of putting the oxygen mask on you before you put it on somebody else. That's what managing time effectively is ultimately doing. It's giving you this chance to put the oxygen mask on you so that you can do the right work at the right time with the right energy and be around people in the right way. So we're going to keep on moving through, because I thank you so much for participating in that. The next level of this is thinking about the organization you work for, company, organization. What are their top 5 priorities? And you don't have to send anything to me in chat right now. Just think about it. But I am going to actually exclude revenue or money. We all know every organization needs money, revenue, a solid budget, funding in order to survive. So that's a result of living through the priorities and meeting the priorities and focusing on the priorities. So leaving money out of that equation, knowing that's ultimately the end result of us doing our work well. What are those top 5 company or organizational priorities that you know? And you don't have to share this out. This is just something I want you to be aware of, as there's things that your company is trying to do. When I was working inside an organization, one of the studios, they had a global initiative, right? So ideally, they thought the global initiative was going to make money for the company. But you can't say, let's make money globally. It's how are we going to show up globally to find that revenue? If it's a theme park, it's understanding that guest satisfaction is just as important as employee satisfaction. That we know when guests are satisfied, they spend more money. If it's in retail, they know if customers are satisfied with their shopping experience, they spend more money. So it's thinking about the priorities to make the outcome of revenue. So I've been chatting quite a bit there, but just thinking about those company priorities or organizational priorities, and just for a moment, step back and say, do they overlap? Is there any kind of Venn diagram where what your organization is trying to accomplish and what you're trying to accomplish significantly overlap? If there's not, it's okay. Your focus may have just been very, very personal right now, but that's where you're going to find the spark in the work that you do, is when your personal priorities and your organizational priorities start to sync up. Even if that means taking care of my family effectively so that I can earn money. Like it's okay that some of it is about taking care of family. The way that we dig into this and the way that we start focusing in is thinking about, and I know you have more than 10 things on your plate for today, but what are the top 10 things you would need to do by the end of today? And every day, just starting your day looking like, what's the most important thing I can do? And then what's the next important thing? What do I have to accomplish based on what I know right now? What do I have to get done? And then I'm going to look at tomorrow and see, okay, by the end of today, if I get this done, it qualifies as checking the box over here of tasks accomplished, but it's also setting me up for success for tomorrow. I'm not going to be taken off guard. I'm going to be well organized for whatever's on my plate for the next day. We're going to do the exact same thing thinking about the week that we're about to start. We're going to do the exact same thing, taking a bigger step back look at a month. Some of you might even work in jobs that have a natural cadence to that, where it's month end or it's quarter close or it's the end of a semester. And those things sort of create a moment for you to take that pause and go, okay, did we do what we said we were going to do? What are we doing next? If you don't have those types of things in your everyday work, you can create them for yourself just by checking in. What am I doing today? What am I doing for this week? And what am I doing by the end of the month? So the next thing I want you to be thinking about is the idea of how that work gets assigned and how we tend to approach it. This may feel familiar to you. This is a 2x2 model that's been around since Eisenhower. He was using it, and then it got co-opted by all the different time management programs I've ever taught. They've used it and relabeled it in different ways, but the concept is the same. The first one is there's work that we will always have to do that is urgent and important. This is the stuff we must do. It's deadline driven. There's a crisis, there's a fire we have to put out, there is a critical element to it, there's something that's pressing, and we must do this work. This is that mission critical kind of task or activity. There's a lot of this on our plates every day. That's how we're deciding our priorities. Honestly, we're looking at like, oh my gosh, this is going to blow up. Oh, that person's going to blow up if I don't get this done. Those are must-dos. The other one that we spend a little bit less time in is make time ideas of it's not urgent, but it actually is quite important. So this isn't on fire. This is that more long-term project. This is the thing that's due maybe 6 weeks out or 6 months out from now. This is the relationship that maybe tugs on you every once in a while and says, hey, can I get your time? And we have to actively make time for it. This is our health, which sometimes we have to make time to exercise or eat healthy or do the right thing, but nobody's screaming at us to do that. That's internally driven. And if we don't make time for some of these things, they slide over to crisis. They slide over to must-dos. You go to the doctor and they say, by the way, you have high blood pressure. You need to check on how you're eating or exercise more. Maybe we don't manage those relationships, and all of a sudden it becomes a must-do because we're in a critical relationship crux in terms of how we're responding to the people around us. We don't have anything in that emotional bank to draw upon because we've used it all up. We haven't taken the time to recreate or have recreational activities in our life, and so we are burned out. And that may create crises, but it may also mean that we're not well suited to decide what should we be spending our time on, which leads to it's urgent, but it's actually not important. So this is the stuff we end up managing. It's the how many Zoom calls am I in today? How many meetings am I supposed to be attending or on the phone with? How many reports do I have to get out today? Why am I on this email chain? Those are the managed things. They're not necessarily important to the ultimate priority or the goals you're trying to accomplish, but there's an urgency to them. Somebody put that red exclamation point on the email. Somebody has sent you 16 texts, or they've blasted you on Slack that you have to respond immediately. Whatever that tool is, there's some level of urgency. Your phone ringing. Right now, it's almost always ringing you with spam, but that's an urgent moment that I have to make a quick decision. Is that a potential client, or is that actually something I don't need to pay attention to? That is drawing my focus away from either my must-dos or the things I'm supposed to be making time for. And if I'm burned out, I make poorer decisions in this space. And I say yes to stuff that might not even be mine to do. I might not be adding value to that meeting, or that meeting isn't adding any value to me, but I can't communicate that because I don't have a clear head around it. And the last one is really thinking about how do I minimize this space? And we fall into this space if we spend too much time in the must-dos. So if you are running at 110 miles per hour, day in and day out, you're working into the wee hours, you're waking up at the crack of dawn, it's always about everybody else, you're never taking care of yourself, you're gonna slide into the space. It's not urgent, it's not important, but I don't have the brain power to do anything else. So when I am in this space of not urgent and not important, I might feel judged by Netflix saying, are you still watching? Because you've been here for 6 episodes. It's going to be anything that I've done to excess. So it's not that it was a bad activity. Going online and watching cat YouTube videos is not necessarily a bad thing, but the rabbit hole I fell in 4 hours later, that was because I had not spent enough time re-energizing and taking care of myself. And so that time got sucked away from me because I didn't have the energy to do anything else. So the big takeaway here is we really need to start taking time to take care of ourselves, to take care of the relationships, to do long-term planning, to think about what are the things that we're trying to accomplish here. So that larger goal setting and prioritizing, that thought will set you up to do more effective and efficient must-dos. So I'm going to launch a quick poll here. And so it'll be a minute while we watch people respond. The poll here is going to have just 3 questions, and it is a chance to, I'm not going to check your math, so you can just do your best guess here. But it's how much time do you think you're spending in 3 of these quadrants? I'm not asking about the make time quadrant. Research shows people don't spend enough time there. But I'm going to ask you about the must do, the manage, and the minimize. So the poll is now available to you. And I'm going to ask you to go ahead and start responding. Are you more than 75% of your day sitting in that must-do mode? Or are you about half of your day there? Maybe you spend less than 25% of your day in that space. And the same thing if you want to look at the minimize and the manage quadrants. So go ahead and start responding. How much time do you think you are spending in these spaces? Oh, and we are not spending a lot of time in minimizing. Okay. About half the workday seems to be in trying to manage stuff so far. It's like a race going on, neck and neck in the must-do zone. 50% of people's time seems to be in must-do, but 75% of the time is very close behind. All right, we'll just give it another minute. So we've got just about 77%. All right, we're at about just almost 85% of you have responded. And let's go ahead and end the polling and take a look at those results. So hopefully you can see these on your own screen, but I'll call it out just in case you are dialing in from an iPhone. It's tough to see. We've got our winner here is about 50% of the day is in the must do. That's pretty standard. Most of us spend most of our day just trying to handle those fires, those critical elements, those pressing deadlines. When it comes to percentage of time spent in the minimize quadrant, the stuff that's not urgent and not important, there's a lot of people saying they're not really spending a lot of time there. It's less than 25%, so that's good news. That's not necessarily what the norm is. So either you are overly optimistic about yourself or congratulations. And then the third one, that managed space. And that managed space, again, we've got about 50% of the time spent managing that quadrant. And the one thing that we know is common about both must do and manage, those tend to be influenced by external forces. Our deadlines tend to be set by other people. Those fires that get set, yeah, we may have influenced by not planning effectively, but there's usually an element of somebody else's urgency has now become our priority. Their lack of following through on something creates a hassle for us, so that becomes a must do. We are called into other people's meetings. We are the result of somebody making a phone call or a quick request for a quick turnaround. And it's not important to me, but it's coming across as urgent. Those tend to be externally driven. The minimizing, where I spend my time, that urgent and not important, and the where I should be making time, those tend to be self-driven. That's on us. We've got to tap into our intrinsic motivators to make that stuff happen. So again, you can do this privately, but I'd love to see, I'm going to close out the poll here, but I'd love to see in chat, if you guys could share with me, what are some things you know you want to make time for? What is it that you think, if you made time for something, it actually would help you spend less time in the must do or the manage, and even maybe ultimately the minimize? So what's a make time for you? Recreational reading. Exercise, yes, right there with you. Exercise, go for a walk. Time for you, yoga, fantastic. Family time, time for business. Take breaks throughout the day, yes. Cooking actual meals, clean the house. Yes, there's so many of these things. You can actually see that if we don't exercise or eat properly or cook our own meals, and I'm living with this. We were doing a lot of DoorDash and Grubhub. That's not very good for the waistline. It's certainly terrible for the budget. And all of a sudden you end up in a crisis mode because you're realizing we've got money floating out the door that maybe we can't afford to have float out there anymore, or physically I'm just not where I used to be. So now I'm getting exhausted faster. So the idea of getting up for a walk seems even harder to do. So this making time for ourselves is critical for us to be able to do the other better. And if we make time for some of those things that you guys are calling out here, you are actually like reading recreational, or I just saw learning a new language. Those things are sparking parts of the brain, and you're creating new synapses and new wiring that makes you more creative in your day-to-day work. So we do want time for that stuff that doesn't feel quote unquote work related. It actually is preparing you to be even more effective and more creative, more inspired in the work you do. If we make that time for ourselves and taking care of ourselves physically, we are now having a smarter, better wired brain for actually critical thinking, decision making, all of those elements. So I'm going to move us forward because I want to be time sensitive. So making sure we stay on point. The personal productivity piece of this is completing any action, but the actions that move you closer to accomplishing your goals in a way that brings balance and ease into your life. So any time management program, any program shouldn't be making you feel like, oh, I've got a burden now. I've got to go take a walk. No, that walk is now freeing you up to think better when you're sitting at the desk. Calling out to your team, hey, I know we've got a 30-minute Zoom meeting or video meeting. Can we make that 25 minutes? Because I'm going to have an immediate start on the hour. And give yourself that 5 minutes to walk around your apartment, even if you are in a one-room studio, taking a walk in a circle, getting a glass of water, getting out of your chair for a moment is going to refresh you and help you shift gears for the next thing you need to do. So it's those little things that allow you to have that greater, more focused kind of approach to the work that's on your plate. And a lot of the stuff that you guys called out in the chat, those things actually help you sleep better. And if you sleep better, you actually calm down your amygdala, the whole emotional thing in your brain, and you are better able to control your emotions. So if you've been finding yourself on edge, this is a chance to take care of yourself so that you actually can be more present and more logical, more rational, but also more emotionally centered in the reactions that you have with your work people and your family. So that productive mindset, I like to think of it as I've got a destination in mind. I know where I'm heading. I've got a rough GPS of how I'm going to get there, but I don't need to be afraid of going off road. So if you think about those external things, the must-dos and the manage, those are sometimes going to have us head off road. It's a detour we didn't expect. It's work we didn't plan for, but that's okay. We just take a deep breath. We know where we're ultimately trying to go. So now I can have a conversation with somebody about how to get back on track. Or I can actually step back and say, is this still the destination I'm trying to get to? Does this make sense? I once had a goal, and by the way, I have definitely passed it. I once had a goal to retire at the age of 45 and live in a lovely little town called Pacific Grove, California. A couple of things there. At the time I was 45, I still would have had kids in grade school or high school. So they would have needed to be on board to make that big move. And my husband really didn't want to retire from what he was doing and go live in a small town, lovely town, but that's not where he wanted to be at 45. So sometimes we make these idealized destinations, and it's okay to stop and rethink them and go, okay, what actually makes sense? What am I able to do? What do I want to be doing? And by the way, I love my job. So why was I thinking about retiring? So when we go off road, it's a great opportunity to step back and say, have I been focusing on the right things? Is that still my end goal? When we're doing that, one of the ways that we can best make decisions is really understanding our energy. So I like to think of it this way. Off is I have nothing. I'm either asleep and hopefully regenerating, or I'm completely off the clock and there is zero expectations from me. I've got kids in bed, or there's no expectations of me from other people in my house, or my pets are finally chilled out in the corner. I don't have anybody asking anything of me. I get to be off or asleep. It also means if we're off, we don't even have the brain power to do the work we would do. So truly off the grid. Low power, I might be expected to work, but I'm going to be very easily distractible. It's going to be hard for me to focus. I might be tired. I might be exhausted. All kinds of things are going to happen in that low power mode. And most of us hit this at least once or twice during the day, depending on what our schedule is and what those expectations are on us from others. That on button is really, this is my standard level of output. Things are pretty good. I can moderately focus on everything I need to. I'm sort of almost in the zone, but at least zoned enough to do the work I need to do. And the last one is, I'm on my superpower. This is when I am completely there. I've got all the energy I need. I'm actually just completely in tune and sparking. The interesting thing about this mode is it might not fall within 9 to 5. It might not fall within the typical hours of business. We now know that with all these other expectations on us coming at us from every angle, we probably want to do a better job of figuring out our prime time. And I'm just curious if anybody already knows what their prime time is. I've got one client, theirs is 11 p.m. It's by the time they get everybody down in the house, nobody else is fighting for Wi-Fi. They sit down and they can just power through their work. Other people, they do tend to come alive at 10 a.m. So I'm just curious if you want to throw in chat if you know what your prime time is. When do you get your best work done? It's 9 to 2, so it's pretty standard, 9 to 11, 10 to 2, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., late morning, 7:30. I'm not saying any after 2 p.m. Yep, when caffeinated, 8 or 9 p.m. Yeah. So, and this one's calling out when the baby's asleep. Like, there are things now that are constantly changing what our prime times might be. After 3 p.m., 9 p.m. I had one woman tell me that her new prime time was 4 a.m. She got up to do a good 2 hours of work before her toddler woke up. And then she really had to put all work away and focus on him for his first couple of hours. And then he went to a nap, and then she got to get back into work. So this idea of understanding what your prime time is, start thinking about what's on your plate and adjusting your work to fall into those prime times. It's not always going to work. There's going to be times you're going to have to work on something you don't really want to do. And somebody called out the no distractions. Some people are fine with a little bit of buzz around them. Other people just need that really quiet, I can't have anything else coming at me. So that's great knowledge. And sometimes we take it for granted what it is, and we don't remember to communicate that to others or ask them what their prime time is. So making sure that we are trying to sync up, whether it's people that we're in a shared living space with, or it's people that we're working with, checking in on what's your prime time. What's the best time for us to try to get this meeting, this activity done by? If you are one of those people where it's late in the night, maybe you have a conversation with, hey, I'm going to need you to pretend I'm working in Australia. My time zone is set slightly differently than yours. I will get it done. You'll have it before business the next day, but I'm not going to really hit that until 11 p.m. at night. These are the things I think of. And if my door was open, you would have my cat in my lap, in my arms while I was trying to teach. He is my general interruption and obstacle to work. So I need to take that into account. I no longer have small children. I can tuck my husband away in another room where he does his work, I do mine, but the cat really doesn't care. I have to look at my calendar. Where am I supposed to be? Who am I supposed to be meeting with? What work needs to get done? What are the pockets where I'm not doing something, where I actually have time to do, computer work or follow up on something? And then what clock am I living to? When do I really want to start my day? And when do I hope to end my day? And are there going to be pockets of time that I'm starting and stopping? To that point where we are stopping from that minute of, I got 9 to 11, that's my prime time. I'm going to take a small break. I'm going to block it on my calendar. I'm going to step away and refresh, maybe choose to eat a lunch, get a glass of water, then come back into the rest of my day. And then hopefully I'm going to take another little brief window late in the afternoon. And maybe I'm going to work until after 6, but I want to feel in control of that I'm not punching a clock per se, but I'm in control, and I understand that I am living within the best windows of time for me, and I'm taking into account what are the best windows of time for my family. So these are the standard interruption tips. And this is the Expect and plan for them. Like I said with my cat, I just got to expect it and I got to plan around that. So while I might be worried my Wi-Fi is going to drop by being in my office, I can't do it anywhere else in this particular house because I would have a cat crawling all over me. So I've got to make some judgments there in terms of where can I be. The walk and talk, I used to teach this in live classes, but it still works even if you've got small children. Start creating your little zone, even if it's a corner of a dining room table. Start creating your little work zone as this is my work zone. And when somebody comes into your work zone in your family life, you stand up and you walk them over to their zone. Even if they're a small child, you can start just gently walking in the back, answering their question, getting them resettled, and then coming back to your desk. If you continue to answer questions, if you continue to deal with people at your computer space becomes the hub. It becomes information central. And so you've got to start creating, no. It's as if there's an invisible box around me. And this is where I do my work. And over here is where I'll help you with your Zoom class or your homework, or you've got a question for me about what we're going to pick up at the store later. Like, you create the other zones in the house and you allow other people to have their zone too. So if somebody's in their schoolwork, you don't interrupt them with, did you make your bed today, when they're in the middle of their school zone. So create those little zones, and then you can walk each other back to your zones to get your mind focused and get them focused in what they're supposed to be doing. Whenever I am doing any kind of stopping the distraction, I tend to run it through these three things. Is there something about this relationship that needs to be handled right now? Is there something at risk? Does this person need me? Have I been there for them, or is this, am I actually at a crisis must-do moment in terms of this relationship? Maybe it is actually more critical to stop and have a moment with that screaming toddler than it is to worry about what my coworkers are thinking right now about the noise in the background. And I just say, look, something's come up. I'm going to dial back in when this is resolved, or I'm going on mute and off camera for a moment. I'll be right back. That may be the decision you make, because it's more important to deal with that relationship than it is to worry about the work right in front of you. Other times the results are going to be more critical, and there's going to be something you're going to have to, there's an output or an outcome you're going to have to make happen. Other people are relying on you. There could be revenue or resources involved, other people's credibility, your credibility, all kinds of things wrapped up in that results moment. So you're going to make choices, and maybe that's the choice you have to make, and you wave down somebody to help you out in that moment if you've got the help. If you don't, you have to quickly respond to it and say, I'll get back to you, and then go back to focus on your results. And the last one is this interruption a chance for me to refresh my brain? Does this give me an opportunity to shake off wherever I was, get a fresh perspective, and then come back to the work with a new mindset? So just thinking about, not all interruptions are bad. Interruptions are going to exist. They're going to be there. And I would not want anybody in my life to feel like they were a burden. They have their own expectations and needs, just like I do. And so that's what's going to move us into thinking about time management in a way of, I'm pivoting and I'm adjusting based on what's coming at me. It is a fallacy. It is a myth that we can manage time. We all get the same 24 hours, and we don't get to bank it. We have to use it up through sleep, through work, through activities, through relationships. We are pivoting and adjusting a million times during the day. So we're going to be thinking about this as, here's an opportunity to build a relationship. Here's an opportunity to get a result. Here's an opportunity to refresh and regenerate. So a couple other myths I just want to call out for you. And these are the ones that tend to get us in trouble the most. And I've taught this since 1997. And I've had a ton of people say, I'm really good during chaos. That's where I thrive. Research doesn't back that up. And I would challenge any of you sitting in this webinar right now who think they thrive in chaos to go ahead and create your own little mini deadline. If the thing's not due till Friday, I dare you to do it by tonight at 8 p.m. Push it through. If you need that kind of pressure, go ahead and do it under that kind of pressure. But then I'm going to ask you to check on it Thursday night or Friday morning. Anything you might change? Any typos you might catch? Any different perspectives you now have that you might revisit it and think it through one more time? The stress we put ourselves under while thriving in chaos is actually a bunch of cortisol being shot out into our body. So for those of you who are talking about the stress of working from home, it's that sense of chaos, the things we can't control. We don't need to add to that and think that, oh, I work better under pressure. Research doesn't back it up. All it does is mean you're pushing yourself towards a heart attack a little bit sooner than your neighbor. So if you like tight deadlines, I will fully support you putting that on your calendars. It's a must do for today. Give yourself that tight deadline. Don't do it right before it's due though. Give yourself that window to plan and prep. The other piece to this is multitasking works. We are not a brain that is designed for multitasking. It's not the way it works. I think they say less than 2% of the population even has a malfunction or malformation of their brain that allows for multitasking. Multitasking for us, the way what we're really talking about, is task switching. And every 30 seconds, every couple of minutes, we're switching from task to task to task to task to task. When we are trying to do multiple things and keep multiple things running at once, and anybody that lives in California is going to recognize this, it's like the brownouts when there's too much of a drain on power. They sort of dim the lights so that everyone's not getting as much power as they need. That's what's happening to our brain. We are literally dimming the lights. The more we have open on our desktop, the more we are trying to do and juggle outside the window of our web camera, the more our brain is literally just switching back and forth in tasks, and it's exhausting. And again, it is sending out cortisol. It is meaning that we are probably not having the focus that we need for the work we need to do. And we are setting ourselves up for this. So how many things do you have open on your screen at once? Do you ever turn your phone down to silent? Turn off your notifications. Stop checking Twitter. Stop checking social media. Stop watching the news, if only for a pocket of time so you can focus. So think about the kinds of things you have that is visual pollution and audio pollution that's getting in the way of you being able to focus. Just having one or two things on your plate at a time is far more manageable. Now, the one thing some of you are like, oh, I can do two things at once. You can do one mindless thing with something else. So if you've ever, I don't know, crocheted while watching TV, the crocheting, if you're good enough at it, is mindless, so you can watch TV. You might even be able to play solitaire on your phone while watching TV. It's semi-mindless. You can drive listening to a podcast, but there's things as soon as your brain needs to engage, there's a chunk, it's the same function of your brain that's moving over to handle that, which means it's now no longer doing the primary function. So really be thoughtful about what you think you can do at the same time. So I mentioned very early on, time management is really about communication ultimately. And what you need to have going on for you in order to communicate effectively is you need to know your priorities. And if my priorities, and I've been working from home since 2001 as a consultant, and my kids were quite young, very young school-age kids. And I realized my priority was them. My priority was at the end of the day, at the point when they finally left home, which that's them in the picture, when they finally left home, how would they look back and think about their experience with their mother? Was she always too busy, or was she somebody who could be there for them? Did I also love my job and show up fully focused and respectful to the work I did? Because I want them to know that about me too. So if I know those priorities, it helps me then sort, how do I want to spend my time? Is my relationship with my spouse of value? Is it a priority to me? If I know that, I will show up in a new way. Is my job a priority for me? And what pieces of my job are a priority? What do I want people to be saying at the end of the day about the work I do? What do I want my peers to think of about me when they know I'm sending an email and asking for help, or they get a call from me? Do I want them, ugh, it's her again? Or do I want them going, yeah, Jerry's committed to what she's doing. I want to talk to her about this. Just knowing what your priorities are allows you to have a conversation with somebody about, here's what's on my plate today. Here's what I have to get done. What's on your plate? How do we support each other in this? If we've got to somehow work in some kind of sync manner. Doing this with direct reports, having these kind of conversations with your own immediate supervisor, they can be invaluable for knowing what you're supposed to do next. everyone participates. So as I just called out, this is not just a conversation you have with yourself. And I would even encourage you, if you've got young children in your house, have the conversation with them. They get more than they can articulate. So having a conversation with a little guy or little gal about how they like to spend their time, and that sometimes they like to move from thing to thing to thing, that's replicated in the work world, and that mom or dad or grandma or whoever is the caretaker is, they've got those kinds of responsibilities, and they're going to need to move from thing to thing to thing, and they're going to need their help to be able to focus. So invite them into the conversation, so at least they understand when you're walking them back to where they're going to play, or you're walking them back to their Zoom classroom, or you're walking them back to their homework, or you're letting a partner or a roommate or somebody else in your living space know, I need time right now. They understand because you've already communicated those priorities. The protecting your prime time is critical, and we've already talked about that, but you have to know it so that you can communicate it of, hey, look, I'm really going to need to be fully focused, and so if you guys could turn down the TV, or I'm going to just I know somebody, they said they found a closet in their home, and they just sort of cleared it out so they could sit quietly in the closet, and it just cut down all the noise, and it became the space of don't bother whoever's in the closet, so they could rotate their schedule in that living space, and the people who needed quiet time got the closet. Sounds horrible, but don't be afraid to ask for help. And this is something that we have had this false narrative in our head that somehow we're going to get back to normal. And there probably is going to be no new normal. There's going to be whatever it is, and it's going to continue to adapt, and we're going to need to continue to adapt with it. So if in the old times, being at your desk and asking for help or asking for more time would have been a career killer, take a step back, take a deep breath, know your priorities, know what you're trying to accomplish, know how those priorities overlap with your organization's priorities, and have a conversation with your leader about, here's what I'm trying to make happen, here's where I need some help, or here's where there are challenges. Have that conversation again. Everyone participates with those in your shared living space, or even if they're not in your shared living space, but they ask a lot of your time. In my case, I have to ask my mother to stop sending me emails. She sends me a lot of emails. The idea of being able to say yes to the right things. If I know what my priorities are, I know why I'm saying yes, and I know that it's not going to move me into crisis mode. It's something I can make time for and do effectively. And I can keep it balanced between that make time and must do zone. I also need to be really clear about why I'm saying no and what I'm saying no to, and being able to refer back to my priorities about why that's not happening, why that's not getting done. At the end of the day, and many of you called this out in the chat, if you are feeling stressed, if you are feeling overwhelmed, asking for help can also mean reaching out to your organization to see if they have an employee assistance program. There may actually be a counseling opportunity that it's very limited, if no cost to you, but it allows you to have that outlet to walk through and talk through some of the stressors you're going through and help navigate this in more than just a roughly 45-minute webinar. So this idea of taking care of yourself, at the very least, if you're feeling completely overwhelmed, I like to think of three things. What are the three things I have to do? If I can bundle it into three things, that seems manageable, that I can do, that's where I'm going to put my focus right now. Those three things may be a combination of personal and professional, but I'm going to be really clear on what are the three things I have to make happen today. It's, for me, calming, and I'm going to encourage you to breathe while you do that so that you can allow your brain to take in oxygen and calm itself down, rewire just a moment of where do I want to put my energy, where do I want to put my focus. That's all I have in terms of content. Obviously, there are people, I used to spend 8 hours teaching time management, so doing it in about 45 minutes is definitely the highlights. This is our team, and the executive advisory is here really to help you focus on the people side of business. It's our passion. It's what we show up doing and we love to do. But I want to open it up now to you. Anybody here, you can do it through chat. Let me know what your questions might be. And if you need to jump off because you want to take a good 15 minutes to take care of yourself before your next meeting, I'm going to encourage you to do that. You're going to get this because you registered, so you can watch it again and you can listen to it and pause if you want to do some of those activities of listing things out, listing your priorities. So thank you so much for participating. And I'm going to be here for the next 15 minutes answering questions. So please throw them into the chat if you've got things that you are curious to know. Can we go back to the input outcome section for results? And you're welcome to those of you that are jumping off. So the person that typed an income outcome, that was Kelly. Could you give me a little bit more about what you were looking for in that space? Input outcome. And then somebody's looking for, let our supervisors know that we're overwhelmed in the work we're dealing with a lot of personal issues. And it's rough with getting this bleeding over in terms of there are things that we would have in previous times been able to keep private and work around and through. I think if you feel like your supervisor might not be, they may be going through their own personal challenges, so they may look like they don't have a lot of empathy to your issue, but if that's your concern, I would reach out to human resources in your organization just to say, I'm trying to brainstorm a conversation with my manager about how to address this. They might be able to give you some tips and some ideas about how to approach that. But typically, I tend to say, focus on, hey, here's what I know we're trying to accomplish, and here's some challenges I'm having getting there. You don't need to go into the detail of your personal life, but you could say, I'm having some challenges with scheduling, or I'm having some challenges with some, family member health things. Just, you could keep it at that 30,000 foot view without going into detail. If those of you that are interested in doing something for your team, definitely reach out to us through our website at the Executive Advisory, and we're happy to continue a conversation with you and let you know what that would look like. So taking notes about the relationship line item and missed results. Oh, yes. So it was relationship, results, and refreshing. So the results piece is there are times where I might have something, somebody needing something from me, and I need to choose on, ultimately, here's one of my priorities. And I even allowed you guys to have financial security or financial independence as one of your priorities, because we need that to survive. How we're going to get there is the work we do. So there are times where it may be more critical for you to focus on results because you have to make, you got to pay the electric bill. You've got to keep the rent or the mortgage going. And so you're going to ask somebody in your personal life to maybe hit pause for a moment so that you can focus on the results. Yeah, so somebody said, yeah, what I'm talking to you guys about, it can, somebody called out here, Sheila called out, it can feel basic, and it is, but we absolutely, I love teaching this content because in my career, I focus on it. I want to have integrity when I teach it. So I try to practice all these principles, and it is so easy to fall out of practice because we get caught up in what's right in front of us instead of stepping back and taking a breath. Living alone, this is so hard. And I think that idea of making a list of the things that truly do bring you joy, and is that getting on the phone and having a conversation with, who's your, in business we call them your board of directors, but in your personal life, who's your posse? Like, who's that group of people that there might be one or two people, maybe you're lucky and it's slightly bigger, and you actually say, hey, can we plan on a Saturday just to do a quick Zoom meetup? Everybody has their favorite lemonade or alcohol, whatever it is, whatever your zone is, and snacks, and you do have that connecting virtually. I would say it's also probably pretty critical to have one person that you can reach out to and make it reciprocal. It's not just about you dumping about loneliness, but it's actually reciprocal. Let's have a conversation. What's going on with you? Here's what's going on with me. And really, when you're thinking about those folks in your life, I try to run it through the filter. Is the care and comfort of that other person as important as the care and comfort of myself? Meaning, if I'm feeling alone, I don't want to fall into the trap where I move into just taking care of everybody else. I need to have somebody in my life who is concerned about me. So really think about those folks that you reach out to, and are they asking how you're doing? And then are you asking how they're doing? And it really should be a reciprocal relationship. That would be both relationship, it would be refreshing, and there could be some results there of helping to decrease that sense of isolation. We've still got about 10 minutes, so I'm happy to, if I missed any questions, I'm gonna just do a quick scroll up to make sure I didn't miss anybody who may have had a question. Not the supervisors one. Okay, great. Again, if anybody's still hanging out here and just getting ready to close out, I want to thank you so much for participating today. It is one of my favorite topics because it helps me stay sane myself. And I want to make sure that you guys, if you've got questions, you can reach out to us through our website, and I'm happy to answer those, or we can set up time to chat and figure out if this is something that you think would be valuable to take inside. But again, you're going to have an access to this because you've signed up. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the kind words.